Hello and good evening, everybody, and welcome to our insight into on dentistry. It's lovely to have you all here this evening, and we are very fortunate to have two ex-students from Manchester High who are here to talk about their career education journey through dentistry. So our first speaker tonight that we're going to hear from in a couple of minutes is Zara, and she left in 2019, and I remember Zara very well. And our second speaker of the evening is Niecoo, who left in 2011. So she's got quite a bit more experience. So we're going to have a great sense of two different perspectives on the profession. If you've noticed our flyers around, we did have a third speaker, but unfortunately she's unable to make it this evening. But that's absolutely fine because our two speakers have got plenty that they can tell us all about the profession and their journey through it. So after those speakers, we're going to have Miss Camilla Hannon do a little bit about careers and some courses that you can apply to and get onto to become a dentist if that's what you want to do. In the chat box next to the screen, you can post some questions, and when the speakers have finished, I'll address those questions to the appropriate speaker. And if we don't manage to answer all of those questions, we can always deal with them and contact you afterwards. So I'm now going to hand over to our first speaker, Zara Qureshi, who left here not very long ago in 2019. Welcome, Zara, and over to you.
Hello everyone, my name's Zara. So I'm a third year dental student, and I'm just going to give you a little insight into what it's like to study dentistry. Can I have the next slide, please? So I started in year 7 in 2012, and then I left the sixth form in 2019. So on this slide, I've just put sort of the subjects I studied when I was at Man High. So I kind of picked the subjects that I was interested in and the things I liked. I think it's really important to pick quite a variety of subjects just to kind of keep your options open, and I think it's quite hard when you're doing your GCSEs to know what you're going to want to do at university, so I think having those options are really good. I did put my AS levels in there, and I know you don't have AS exams anymore, but I just put it in there for context so you could see the 4 subjects I picked. Obviously, when I got to A levels, I dropped psychology. I really enjoyed it, but I found that the content was quite a lot to keep up with, and biology and chemistry are obviously 2 A-level subjects that you have to study dentistry. So I feel like it could be quite useful to pick a third subject that the workload isn't as intense, and it just gives you a little bit more variety as well to pick something that it could kind of make you seem a little bit more well-rounded. I know a lot of people pick maths as a third subject, and while it is probably quite useful, it's not necessary, I'd say. If you can pick something that kind of, I don't know, it could give you a little extra something, I feel like it could be quite good. And obviously when I was at Man High, I know they had quite a lot of extracurriculars, so I would definitely suggest getting involved with them. They look great on your personal statement, and it's nice to have something outside of the academic to sort of show. So those are a couple of the things that I did. But yeah, can I have the next slide, please? So my path to studying dentistry, I didn't know straight away that I wanted to do dentistry. I kind of looked at quite a few different courses. I feel like it's quite difficult, like I said earlier, to know sort of straight away what you want to do. So I definitely recommend looking into all the different ideas that you have and sort of give everything a chance. I feel like for me, work experience is what really made me decide that I want to do dentistry. Obviously, because it is quite a clinical subject, when I went into practice and saw what it would be like day to day, it sort of made it easier to envision it for myself. So if you're thinking about dentistry, I definitely recommend doing some work experience even a bit earlier on, just so you can see if it's something that you'd be interested in. So once I decided that I wanted to do dentistry, it was sort of then about picking the right university for me. I don't know with COVID if the universities are still doing open days, but if they are, I'd strongly recommend that you go, because some of the universities that I thought would maybe be my first choice, once I went to the open days, it really changed my mind. And I feel like one thing I'd want to stress is this course is 5 years, it's quite long, and the university is really important, but so is the city that you pick too. You're going to be there for quite a while, and you want to pick somewhere you're going to be happy and comfortable. So my first choice was Leeds, and I feel like it was a really good choice for me. I'm really happy there. The other choices that I picked were Manchester, Liverpool and Sheffield. For dentistry, you only get 4 choices, but you do get a 5th option to pick a different subject. So I picked dental hygiene and therapy, and I feel like it's quite useful to pick a dentistry based course for your 5th choice, because then you won't have to make sort of any amendments to your personal statement. It's kind of universal, and there's no harm really having a 5th choice or having that backup option, because you never know sort of once results day comes around, or by the time it comes around to university you may have changed your mind about what you want to do. So I feel like it's really useful to have a backup. And for the dental hygiene and therapy course I applied to at Leeds, they actually just had the one interview, and they made their offers to me based off that one interview. I didn't have to do anything separate, so you don't really have to go out of your way to do anything extra, but it's nice to know that you have that backup. So I'd strongly recommend putting down a 5th option if you can. Next slide, please. So this is just sort of like a typical week in my life as a 3rd-year dental student. Obviously, this is just specific to my course at Leeds. For different universities, it'll obviously be different, and this has been impacted by COVID as well, so some of the things might be different to what other people might do. So for 3rd year, it's been a lot more intense than some of the other years. If you're wondering if dentistry is quite an intense course, I would say it is. It is quite heavy, it's quite long. It's something to bear in mind. So my typical week, I'm in university 4 times a week, and that's all for clinical teaching. And alongside that, we have lectures. Before COVID, we did go in person to have them, and now everything's sort of moved to online, and a lot of the lectures are pre-recorded, so it's sort of a blended learning approach. And I feel like it's actually quite good, because the clinical time is so intense. It's nice to have the flexibility to do your lectures when it sort of fits around your schedule. So as I mentioned, yeah, I'm in 4 times a week. 2 of the times I'm on clinic, where it will be with patients, and that's more of the real life environment. But on a Monday and Tuesday, I have more clinical skills labs, so these simulate that environment. And we work with phantom heads and plastic teeth. And that's basically where we get all the practice for the things we would do on clinic on real patients. And then, as you can see on the side, I've put sort of independent study times. These are flexible, and they include things like catching up on lectures and writing up notes. And this can also be like group work and things like that. So there is a lot of independent study with university. It's not really, a lot of it is self-directed, and you do have to sort of manage your time well around all the other things that you have going on. So yeah, my week is quite busy at the moment, and I feel like as you progress through the dental school, it does just get more and more intense. So when we started in our first year, a lot of it was quite lecture based, and we didn't really have much clinical time. And as we've moved up the years, it's got a lot more clinical. So I've actually just started seeing my first patient as well, which is a really big step to take forward. And I know it's only going to get more and more intense as I move up to 4th and 5th year. So yeah, that's just something to bear in mind. Can I have the next slide, please? So I thought I'd just break down the course into the academic side of things and the practical side of things, just to give you a better insight into what it would be like to study the, dentistry. So we have between 5 to 6 modules a year. This is obviously specific to my university again. It could differ for others, but just to sort of give you an insight. And it's sort of a mixed learning approach. So we have quite a lot of lectures, which you can, like I said, do in your own time. We have seminars, which are more sort of smaller group discussions where tutors will discuss the content of the lectures with us and sort of clarify anything that we weren't sure about. Tutorials are really good because they give you sort of an in-depth look at how to go about doing things. And for example, we have a statistics module at the moment, and I didn't take maths for A-level, so having a tutorial of someone sort of walking you through it can be really helpful. E-learning is something that you kind of do to supplement the rest of your learning. It's to add on to the lectures and to give you a little bit more detail, but it is very self-directed. You do have to do that in your own time and try and fit it around everything else that you have. Video demonstrations are one of the most helpful things for dentistry because a lot of it is quite practical. Reading how to do something and watching someone do it it's like invaluable to the experience. So before we go to every lab, we have the videos to show us what we're going to do that day, and that's really the time where we'll be practicing everything before we do it on real patients. And then debriefs, we don't have these as often, but they kind of just break down aspects of the course. So for example, we might have one once every semester with the whole year group, and these take place on Teams now. And they basically just give us an overview of the semester and what to expect with exams and any like updates with COVID and how that affects our learning. So these can just be quite useful to see, you know, the planned learning that's going to happen for that semester. Some of the modules are examinable, so not every module will end with an exam. Some of them are more of a case of seeing how you progress throughout the year. So for some of the modules that are a bit more clinical, it's more about sort of submitting a reflective log, for example. So this is where we would write down our reflections from each clinical session we have. So for example, with patients, we could discuss what went well, what didn't go well, what we need to improve next time. And you would consistently do that over every clinical session. And at the end, that's sort of looked at rather than just having an exam, for example. We also have progressional elements, so these aren't necessarily assessed, but they're just sort of tasks we have to do throughout the year for the different modules just to progress through the course and to sort of add on to our learning before we get onto the exams. So the different types of assessments include exams, as I've mentioned. We also have essays and assignments. Even though this isn't a humanities subject and a lot of it is practical, you would still have to write essays or submit assignments. The reflective logs I mentioned. Group work is a really big thing for dentistry. From first year, they put you into a group, and every year they change these groups. Our groups tend to be about between 8 and 10 people, so they're not too big. And we have, this year in particular, we've had a lot of group work, and it's really good to build on your team working, because one of the biggest things in the dental profession is about working well in a team and working well with your dental nurse and the technicians and everyone else involved. So it's really good to build on those skills from the start. Something we've done recently, I think probably with COVID, this has impacted the assessment style, but instead of just submitting group presentations, we now have recordings with them and video presentations. So there's a lot that does go into that. Something that's more recent is the simulated scenarios. So we started those last year, I believe. So they basically have actors come in and pretend to be patients, and then they give us a scenario and we have to sort of act out what we would do in that situation. So for example, it could be delivering bad news to a patient, or giving oral health advice to a patient, or managing their anxiety if they feel anxious about an appointment. And to be honest, these are really useful because as much practice as you can get in before seeing your patients is really, really valuable, just so you're prepared. OSCEs, we haven't actually had these due to COVID, but they're sort of a clinical type of exam rather than being a written exam. So they're more spoken and they're more interactive. And then I know for my university, I don't know if every university has this, but we have a final year project which we start in year 4. And it's basically we pick a research question and then we carry out the research ourselves and we do a full write-up. It's almost like, I guess, what the equivalent of a dissertation would be for more of a humanities subject. And I thought I'd just add in here some related A-level subjects. If you're not sure, obviously you have to pick biology and chemistry for dentistry, but I thought I'd mention some of the other subjects that I think you could potentially pick as a third subject if you're not sure. Psychology is a really, really useful one for dentistry. We have a lot of modules that talk about managing patients' anxiety and things like that, and a lot of the topics I've noticed did come up from even my psychology AS. I didn't do it for A-level, and a lot of it crossed over and was very useful to me, so I feel like that's one to definitely consider. I also think English could be quite important. We do a lot of write-ups and note-taking, and occasionally we'll have essays and things, and I feel like if English is a subject you like or you're really good at, it could be quite useful. Maths is obviously, again, it's a good subject to have, but I wouldn't say it's necessary. Just now we've started a module on statistics, and I feel like having maths could have helped with that, but it's not essential. But if you're looking for a third subject, it could be useful. And physics is a little bit of a random subject. You might not necessarily think it's associated with dentistry, but we did have a module at the start that was more about sort of radiographs and x-rays, and a lot of it was quite physicsy, and again, if that's a subject you like and you'd be happy to take it forward, it would relate to the course if that's what you're wondering. So I thought I'd just add them in there just in case you had any I guess any confusion about what you could pick for a third subject. Can I have the next slide, please? So these are the practical aspects of the course. As I mentioned, I'm in 4 times a week, and there are actually 4 different types of clinical aspects of my course. So the first one I'm going to talk about is clinical skills labs. We started these in second year and we had them twice a week, and now I have it once a week but for a full day, so pretty much 9 to 4. And this is where we learn everything in detail. We can ask all the questions we want to. We basically just practice our technique on plastic teeth, and if something goes wrong, you can just unscrew the teeth and put a new one in. So it's a good way to practice before doing it on a real patient. So you really perfect your skill over time and build up your confidence before you see patients. And it just sort of mimics the clinical environment, and you get a feel for what it would be like. And it's a really valuable time just to get all your questions answered and really just build up your skill. We do a lot of different things. So it's we've done like fillings, we've done crown preparations, shade matching, impressions, tooth scaling. You do a lot of different things, and over time, as the years go on, the skill level increases as well. So something we started this year was clinical assisting and treating. So you're put into pairs, and one of you will be treating one day and one of you will be assisting. So for example, if I have a patient, my partner would assist me with note taking or getting me any instruments I need, or walking the patient out, or any of those kind of things. So it's really useful to have a partner, and again, this is where the team working does really come in, and it is quite important. And then we swap over the next time, so then my partner would have a patient and I would assist, and you get to see both sides of the role, and it's really quite scary when you have your first patient. I only just had my first patient, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and you feel like almost a bit, I've only worked on plastic teeth, like how could I possibly be ready for a person? But it's obviously led by a tutor, everybody else is in the same sort of boat, and it's a really, like, once you do it, you feel so like relieved that you've seen your first patient. It's a really great experience, and obviously going forward I hope to build on that and see quite a few more patients and build on my skills, I guess. The other thing I wanted to mention are the Simadont dental trainers. This is quite specific to my university, but I do think there are a couple other universities that have this facility, so it might be something to look out for in open days. But this is basically a virtual reality machine where you can sort of drill teeth as if they're real teeth, but they're not, obviously, and it's a really cool thing to be able to do. And again, it just builds on that sort of preclinical experience and getting that practice in. So it's just something I thought I'd mention. It's obviously not with every university, but it might be something to look out for. And then finally, the prosthetic slabs. So we started these last year, and I feel like they're not something you would necessarily think you would do in dentistry, working with Bunsen burners and things like that. But it can be quite interesting to see more of the technical side of dentistry. So working with wax and building up dentures, and it kind of gives you an insight into all the things that you are learning about, to do it practically too, and to see sort of the lab stages. So one of the things we would do is we would request dentures to be made in the lab, but we've also got to see the process of making them and building them up ourselves, which really helps with your understanding. And it's quite fun just to have that different side to dentistry. So yeah, can I have the next slide, please? So when I was thinking about what I wanted to discuss today, I remember when I had these talks at school, and one of the main things, I know at this time you're probably thinking a lot about the application process, and I know it can be quite daunting, and there's a lot of things you need to be aware of. So I just kind of wanted to include a slide about the things that helped me and the things that were quite a big focus and that helped me get to the point where I am now. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about was personal statement. This is really, really important and really essential. This is the first thing that the universities are going to see about you. So you've really got to sell yourself in the best way you can. You want to make sure you get across all the great things that you've done that make you a good candidate for the course. But you also want to be careful not to make it sound too much like a list and you're just sort of listing off everything that you've done. You want to sell yourself in a way that's sort of showing your skill set without, again, like I said, making it sound too much like a list. Extracurriculars, as I mentioned earlier, are really important because for dentistry, they're not just looking for someone with good academic ability. There'll be a lot of people who have good grades. They want a well-rounded individual who has good personal skills and hobbies, and that's a really good way to sell yourself. So be involved in as many extracurriculars as you can and make sure you mention them in your personal statement. Work experience is really important because that's sort of showing your interest in the subject, and you can sort of, I did 2 weeks of work experience. I think a minimum, I think at the time I did it, it was sort of you should do 2 weeks work experience, and I did them at 2 different practices. Maybe if you did one with like a dentist and one with an orthodontist or something like that, just to get different perspectives. It's really something interesting to talk about in your personal statement, and it shows sort of your interest in the course. Voluntary work and part-time job, things like that. Obviously they're not essential, but they look really good. Anything you can really say to sell yourself, you should just include it, and make sure you relate it back to the course, which is one of the main things I was going to say. It's very easy to say I've done this and I've done that, and that's great, but you need to be able to link it back to the course and talk about sort of why that would make you a good candidate for dentistry. So think about some of the skills that are needed for dentistry. There's a lot more than what I've included on this slide, and after this you could probably go and look them up, but some examples that are really important are things like communication or teamwork, manual dexterity, which is working with your hands, and empathy, time management. And if you can try and link these back to the things you've done, it will look really good in your personal statement. So for example, for team working, say you did Duke of Edinburgh, you can talk about that experience and how you picked up team working skills and how that links with dentistry. Just make that connection in your personal statement, and it will really help the university to see that you understand what it takes to be on this course. So the next thing, obviously, if they invite you for interview, this is then the next really crucial stage of when they're going to decide whether to offer you a place or not. I can't stress enough how important the interview stage is. I know there's people who necessarily didn't get all the grades or everything they needed, but because they sold themselves so well in their interviews and so well in their personal statement, it really helped them to get their places, I guess. So for dentistry, they have multiple mini interviews. So instead of sort of having a panel interview with just questions just being asked at you, these are more little stations with different tasks. So I remember when I did mine, I had one station where it was an actor pretending to be a patient and I had to act out what I'd do in that scenario. Or, for example, there was another table where it was about analysing a graph. And there was another one where they had different pictures of teeth and I had to sort of explain what I could see in each picture. There'll be a lot of different stations and they're really trying to test all your different skill set. They don't just want to have a one-way conversation, they do want to see all the different skills that you do have. So the biggest thing I'd say for these interviews is practice. I know when I was at school, they arranged a MMI day for us and that was really helpful. It's really good to get the practice in and have sort of that simulated environment of going around to the different stations and sometimes being put on the spot with the questions you're asked. So if they do have that for you guys this year, I would definitely suggest making use of that because it's very useful. And even if you just have like friends or family members throw questions at you just so you can sort of learn to think on the spot and know what kind of answers you would want to give, that could be really useful. So it is good to have pre-prepared answers just so you know you're not going to go blank and you've got something to say, but it's also important that you don't sound too scripted. It needs to sound like very natural and it needs to sound like yourself, basically. You don't want to sound too much like you're just reading off a script. In the interview, they're very much testing your personal skills and how you speak and how you act, because dentistry isn't, like I said, just about the academics. A lot of it is clinical and a lot of it will be about speaking to patients and your interactions with them. So they really are just testing your personal skills. So I would definitely suggest prepping very well for these interviews, and obviously that's the key stage before they'll make an offer, so you want to do as well as you can in that. And finally, I just wanted to mention about the UK CAT and BMAT. So I know this was a requirement when I applied for university, but the different universities will have different requirements, so it's very important you look up the course catalogue and what each requirement is. They might require things for GCSEs or for example, I know some universities had a minimum GCSE requirement for English and maths, so definitely make sure you look them up and you don't limit yourself in your choices before you've even given yourself that chance. So if a university is asking for something that maybe you don't have, instead of putting that as one of your choices, I would try and pick something else that you think would give you a better chance. So yeah, for the UK CAT and BMAT, each university requires a different thing. I know for Leeds, that was the only place that required BMAT out of the ones I applied for, and the rest needed UK CAT. Obviously, I really wanted to go to Leeds, so I did the BMAT, but if it's just like, if most of the universities you're interested in do UK CAT and you feel like it's going to be too much to do BMAT as well, just sort of think about what's going to give you the best choices, I guess. So prepare well for these. They are quite hard. There's a lot of practice questions you can get. I think there's online like tutorials and practices you could do. Prepare as well as you can for them because they are quite hard, and some universities can be quite strict on their cut-off point. So again, look at that beforehand if you can and see what kind of score you need to be able to get into the university. Some universities won't weight it as highly and it won't matter as much, but for some it will. So just be aware of the different requirements and practice as much as you can. Can I have the next slide, please? So yeah, that's everything I wanted to discuss. If there's any questions, I'm sure we can answer them at the end. And if there's not enough time, then I'm sure they could just be passed along to me and I'd be happy to answer any questions. But thank you so much for listening. And yeah, I'll hand back now. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Zara. That was fantastic. And I think that was really useful in terms of giving a really good picture about what it's like applying to university and at the stage that you're at being in university, because obviously we're still students here at school. So that's the next stage for any students here interested in applying for dentistry. So that's really useful. Thank you so much for that. And yes, please do post any questions that you might have in the chat and we can address those later on. So I'm going to hand over to Niecoo now, who's going to talk about her time at Man High and her professional journey. So welcome, Niecoo, and thank you very much indeed for coming tonight.
Hello everyone, my name is Niecoo and I'm just going to speak to you a little bit about my career progress since leaving Manchester High, and a little bit about what kind of options and avenues you can go down once you've qualified as a dentist. So next slide please. So I am currently an orthodontic registrar. So what this means is I'm studying a 3 years master's degree alongside training in an NHS hospital to become a specialist in orthodontics, which is braces and dealing with facial deformities, abnormalities of teeth, so extra teeth, teeth in the wrong place, and sort of I'll tell you how I've got to this stage, but we'll start first from my time in Manchester High. So on the top right hand side you can see a very cheesy picture, and that's me when I was in year 7. Some of those girls in that photo are still my very best friends now, and we've all done lots of different things, law, medicine, all sorts, but pretty much it all started with our GCSEs and A-levels. And I think what I just wanted to say with this slide is whatever you choose in terms of your choices, Manchester High will set you up perfectly for your university degree. So I think, yes, you need to have certain subjects to get into things like dentistry, like you need biology and chemistry, but I wouldn't worry too much about the additional subjects that you choose. Go for the ones that you enjoy, go for the ones that you think that you will excel in, because guaranteed whatever subject you do will come to your rescue at some point in the future, whether it's writing essays and having the skills to be able to do that, or whether it's having a hobby or an extracurricular activity such as music, which is what I did, to have on the side as a stress relief, as a thing to enjoy alongside your main career. So could I have the next slide, please? So I always wanted to do something very sciencey, and I didn't know what that meant, but that meant that I pretty much found myself in the science block 24/7. So I took chemistry and biology, and I just tried to enjoy most of my Man High life. So the skeleton in the middle, I've been informed by my sister, who is currently at school in Manchester High, that the skeleton still exists somewhere. So yeah, we used to fool around quite a lot with that in the chemistry department. I did things like Duke of Edinburgh, and was very involved in the music department. And I think it's important that you show yourself to be a well-rounded person, somebody that's involved in multiple activities and not just unidirectional in the direction of where you want to go for your career. Because as a previous colleague mentioned, you would like to come across as, you know, somebody who is going to be a colleague to work with in the future, and someone that you're going to be able to get along with a team. So having those skills from doing these activities like going on Duke of Edinburgh and having a good social life with your friends is equally as important as getting those grades. So next slide, please. So a little bit about my dental school experience. I went to the University of Manchester, where I undertook a 5-year degree, which resulted in me graduating with a Bachelor of Dental Surgery, which is pretty standardised across the UK, that you should graduate with a BDS. And so I decided to go to Manchester because obviously I wanted to stay close to home, and I very much enjoyed it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what my dental school experience involved, but I won't focus too much as I know you've already had a very helpful talk on the ins and outs of dental school. So next slide, please. So a little bit about my sort of thoughts. A dental degree is hard, it's a lot of work, but it's equally rewarding, and what you put in, you will get out. It's a very nice mixture of practical skills and also theoretical learning. So it's applied science. What you learn in the textbooks and in the lectures, you will very quickly put into practice through lab-based assessments and then ultimately treating patients. You learn through experience and just gaining skills, gaining knowledge, and just learning on the job almost. So you need to be prepared for that, and almost in a sense, you may not feel prepared for everything once you go into it, but that's how everybody feels, and you'll be supported and you'll be safe. So the interesting thing about a dental degree is that it's often split between the university side, which is the academic side, where you have your assessments and you have your learning, and also a dental hospital where real life NHS patients receive treatment. And so that element of professionalism has to be there from day one. And that, I think, is sort of a really special part of dental degrees, that you have to mature and you become a professional very quickly, because you're dealing with people, and it's very, very enjoyable. So it kind of mixes up your learning. You don't quite feel like a student. You feel like, you know, you've got a bit of responsibility. Manchester specifically was problem-based learning. It's a type of teaching that they have, PBL. And what this essentially means that it's not didactic traditional teaching where you are provided all the information. A lot of it is based on tutorials where you will set out objectives under the supervision of a member of staff, and as a team you will then disseminate what goals that you have, what aims you have for your learning. You will go away over the space of a week or 2 weeks and you will find out what the information is. So you will use textbooks, you will use resources, and you will self-learn. Then you will come back together, you'll congregate, and you'll all discuss the learning, and it will all be under, again, the supervision of a qualified tutor to ensure that you aren't learning the incorrect things, but it is very much self-motivated. So that is something that you should consider when you're putting down your options for different universities, because Manchester obviously has this system compared to places, for example, such as Newcastle, Bristol, that I believe are still quite traditional in the way that they teach. There is an option usually in most dental schools to intercalate. If you want to do a little intercalation for a year, or go abroad, or do a languages course, there is that flexibility, but you need to inquire with the careers office beforehand so that you sort of plan that out ahead of time. And dentistry is very, very evidence-based. As I said, I've put a strong sort of pointer on the fact that we're treating patients from very early on, and everything that we do is based on science. So your dental degree will direct you towards learning, you know, how to appraise research, how to understand what the science is around us, and as I said, apply that to your patients. And you'll learn to be a leader very quickly, because in dentistry, the dentist is the head of the team. And, you know, often we're put in situations that are stressful and difficult to deal with. And dental school teaches you really well how to be a good leader. So next slide, please. What to expect from your degree. So I mentioned PBL. You'll be in very small groups, so there won't be opportunity for you to get lost in the system. And there's a lot of case-based learning. So what this means is you'll have examples of patients who have presented with certain things, and you will talk through those cases, and it will help to bring the whole story together. You are definitely supported, and you will always have tutors available to speak to. So don't ever feel that, you know, you have to go off and you're not going to have any formal teaching. You will do. As I said, I won't go over the didactic teaching and the research techniques, but that's pretty standardized for any university teaching. The simulation laboratory will, as my colleague previously mentioned, be a fundamental part of your degree. So going into labs and doing clinical skills on phantom heads. And in Manchester, we actually started treating patients from second year onwards. So we're quite early on, we're treating patients, but I think that's good for confidence, because it sort of gets you used to talking to patients and learning, you know, how to deal with patients. We also had something called outreach clinics, which are essentially a protected dental practice environment where they've been custom made and they belong to the university. But you will experience how it feels to be a dentist and how to function in practice with a nurse, treating patients and carrying out routine care. So I think that's a really, really valuable thing that we do, and that happens in 4th and 5th years. and you will have regular assessments, as will any university degree. So you need to be aware it's a heavy workload, but very, very enjoyable, and definitely something that Man High girls would be able to handle. I think another point worth mentioning is that dentistry and medicine are regulated in this country by the general councils. So for dentistry, it's the General Dental Council, and this means that whatever university you go to, your education will be standardised because the curricula is set out in advance and it's monitored quite stringently. So wherever you end up going in the UK in a dental school, you know that you're pretty much going to come out on a level plane to everybody else. So next slide, please. A little bit about dental school life. I loved it. It was some of the 5 best years of my life. You'll very quickly be inaugurated into a dental school society where there'll be lots of social events and opportunity to get into trouble. You will feel that it's a really close-knit community because dental school groups are little compared to others. So, you know, in Manchester, I think it was about 80 students, and everybody knows everybody and everyone knows everyone's gossip. But it's a good thing because it means that you can always turn to a colleague and you can always do group learning and sort of just have fun and enjoy yourself whilst you go through the degree. So this was a massive part of the experience. The other thing is that most dental schools, Manchester certainly did, have what we call an elective, which is towards the end of your dental degree, and it's an opportunity. It's a period of time that the university gives you, about 4 weeks or so, to basically go anywhere you want in the world and have some time to look into a dental project. But the sort of phrase dental project could be quite loosely shaped to how you want it to be. So for me, I wanted to go and visit a foreign dental school, so that ended up with me and my best friend going to Japan for 4 weeks with all expenses paid for to visit a dental university there, undertake a little bit of research, and it was really good fun. Other people go to various countries and provide sort of charitable dental care, things like dent aid. So that's a really, you know, good part of the dental degree, and I would stress for you to make the most of that if you do get in. So next slide, please. Here's a couple of photos just to sort of sum up dental school for me. It was a combination of lots of socials, always making sure we're smartly dressed, otherwise you are told off immediately as soon as you walk on clinic by the nurses, but also just opportunity to do, you know, great things like go on runs for charities on behalf of the dental school, and just, you know, it's learning every day and it's new things every day, and opportunity to travel as well. Next slide, please. So what happens after dental school? So once I graduated, the next stage was to do a year of dental foundation training, and in the UK this is compulsory. So almost all students will apply for the 1-year dental foundation training post. It's an NHS salaried post. You can find the details of how much the salary is quite freely online, and it's a 12-month sort of supported training post where you are settled into general dental practice. You will have a supervisor and you will have to undertake a couple of sort of practical assessments to prove to the General Dental Council that you're safe to practice. And essentially after this point, once you've received your certificate to practice and you are a registered sort of dentist, then the world's your oyster really. You can go into a salaried post within the NHS. So you could work in general dental practice, you could work in hospital, you can work in community. There's lots and lots of different options. Mostly, I think the important thing to know is that you don't need to make these decisions now. It's just to be aware that you do have a lot of flexibility with your dental degree under your belt to take it in multiple directions, of which some I will discuss moving forwards. So next slide, please. What will you actually do as a dentist? I think that's worth knowing before you start a degree in it. You're going to be a leader. You're going to lead the dental team. You're going to diagnose problems and you're going to treat people and you're going to help people. You're going to be taking regular care of patients that come to you every sort of 3 months, 6 months and 12. And especially during the COVID climate, dentists have been a port of call for patients who aren't able to get into their medical practices and get into hospitals. So it's important to know that this is still a healthcare degree and you're going into, a healthcare job. So things that you will be doing is fillings, taking out teeth, making dentures, making crowns and bridges, and restoring people's smiles and their confidence. You can also go into cosmetic dentistry, which obviously with the world of social media at the moment, you'll know that there's dentists online who are advertising the work that they do, some good, some bad. And there is a whole world there to explore in terms of cosmetic treatments. You will also be fully trained as a dental surgeon to use things like local anaesthetic, and with some further qualifications, you can do things like sedation as well. So, I often have a debate with my best friend who's a medic that dentists shouldn't have the doctor in front, because we're not doctors, but we are. And you will very much learn through your dental degree that the first 2 years are the same as what medics learn. And then we start to apply our knowledge of the human body and the things that we do. We apply it to a very specific area, which is the head and the neck and the mouth. So things like local anaesthetic, it's a privilege to do. And you can then undertake further training and start to move up the ladder in terms of specialisation. Next slide, please. If you stay in general practice, you could go on to become a partner in the practice, and that obviously would have its financial benefits for you if that was how you were so inclined. You may also wish to set up your own dental practice. You can, however, if you wish to stay salaried, stay in a hospital job, and it will follow the same career structure as a doctor, which is to go up the ranks as you gain experience, working towards becoming a consultant. You can specialise. There are multiple specialties, as I will show you on the next couple of slides, within dentistry. So once you've actually done your dental degree, if you fancy going into something a little bit more niche, then you can do. You can also serve as a dentist in the armed forces, and you can also apply your knowledge to then help teach and train student nurses, student dentists, and other healthcare professionals. Next slide, please. So these are the dental specialties that you may wish to go into. There's lots and lots of specialties, which I won't bore you about now, because I still think it's quite early to worry about these things, but it's just to know that there are many, many avenues that you can go down, which include things like dental public health. So if researching public policy and that sort of thing interests you, then you might wish to know that having a dental degree can open a lot of doors into getting quite high up within official sort of offices, and sort of learning how to influence change on a national basis. And you can even do things like pathology as well. So if you want more of a laboratory based job, then you can do that. So next slide, please. So talking a little bit about what I have done, which is going towards specialisation, as I wish to end up as a consultant in orthodontics. After graduating, you then complete your foundation year, which we call DFY1. And then you will undertake dental core training, which can be 1 to 3 years. You then apply for a competitive training program in your desired specialty, which will take 3 years to specialist level and 5 to consultant. And you will need to sit a whole new bunch of exams and continue studying during that period until you get to the point where you can't go any higher, and you will settle, hopefully, or in my case, probably not. And decide to maybe do a combination of working in general practice and in hospital, either on a private or an NHS basis. Next slide, please. This is just sort of a slide to show you my journey thus far. I have to stress that most of this is actually by choice. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I've really loved dentistry. I enjoy what I do. And so for me, it was a no-brainer to continue studying, continue trying out different specialties. And if you look, that you'll see I've done multiple different specialties. I've tried my hand in oral and maxillofacial surgery, which is fantastic. It's things like looking after, working essentially as a junior doctor, and looking after cancer patients, looking after patients who need surgery for broken jaws, popping cysts and abscesses and reconstructive surgery. It's absolutely amazing, and the experience that I really, you know, is a once in a lifetime experience, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't go into dentistry. I wanted to work with kids for a period, so I did so. I did a little bit of teaching, and then I worked in restorative dentistry, and restorative is essentially the specialty for sort of saving broken teeth, building them up, fixing them, making them look beautiful, doing veneers, things like that. So that was really enjoyable. And all these experiences gave me enough breadth of knowledge and enough sort of maturity over time to sort of make that decision that I wanted to go into orthodontics, which is what I'm currently doing now. And I absolutely love it. My reasons for doing it are because, number one, I find the actual area very interesting. You never know what's going to walk in through the door. So, for example, earlier this week, I saw a patient who had 3 extra teeth, and 2 of them were in the base of their nose. And it's sort of planning what we're going to do with that patient. So it's exciting and it's fun, and it means that I get to do more studying, which I enjoy. Next slide, please. How to get into dental school. This might come a little bit repetitive. I know that we've already gone through this tonight, but you need to really put 100% effort into your UCAS application. Your personal statement should really sort of translate across your enthusiasm and be really clear cut for why you should have a place in dental school. Having the correct A levels, of course, the minimum requirement is necessary. But as I said, personally, I believe that once you've met the minimum requirements, you then need to do what will satisfy yourself to be a good student and ensure that you enjoy your time during school and get yourself to the best position to be a candidate for university. So don't take a course just for the sake of it if you don't think that you're going to be able to excel in that subject and do well in it. Definitely need good references, so make sure you get on with your teachers and make sure that you work hard and you show to them that you deserve that reference. And you may need to do some extra tests. You may need to do the UK CAT or the BMAT, but this is something that you need to inquire with the specific university when you go to apply. You can get lots of books online and you can do courses, and I would strongly recommend preparing. If you fail to prepare, then prepare to fail, okay? So just make sure that you put the hard work in and you'll get there. And just get a good amount of experience. So for myself, my background is that my mum was a dentist, and so that's how I had experience of what dentistry involved. I went and did 4 weeks of work experience in a hospital because I thought initially that I might want to do medicine, and I knew that it wasn't for me. I also went to a different dental practice just to get a bit more experience on, you know, how it would be in a different place to where my parents worked. So you just need to be sure that it's really what you want to do, and I wouldn't go into it if you're not certain, because it's a real big commitment. 5 years is a long time, and it's competitive. So as I said, show enthusiasm. Next slide, please. So I think this is coming towards the end. I just put a couple of little things in there because I thought this could bring everything to a close. If you're considering dentistry, these are the reasons I would say you should do it. If you want to help people, if you want to make a genuine impact on people's lives, often I remember when I was writing my personal statement thinking, gosh, this is so cliche. Every single person must say in their personal statement, I want to change lives, I want to make an impact. But let me tell you something, you really do. You really do. You can change people's confidence. You can turn them from an anxious person who's had a really awful experience to somebody who's very happy to come in and see you. People will open up to you about all sorts of aspects in their life, and you are there for them, and it's amazing. So, you know, I really enjoy that aspect of it. You will create lifelong relationships with some of your patients, especially if you stay in the same place for long enough, and you'll start treating their kids, and you know, it's lovely. It's a very artistic and practical degree. I wouldn't worry too much about worrying if you have manual dexterity or not, although you need to express it and show that you have it. It comes with time. I remember going into dental school, and I'm a violinist. I play the violin, I play the piano, and thinking, oh gosh, I must have good manual dexterity because I play an instrument. And I went in, and when I started doing dental skills in the laboratory, I was thinking, gosh, like this is hard. This is really hard. But let me tell you something, when you've done it enough and you practice and practice and practice, you just become better at it. It's a learn on the job sort of degree. So if you're ready to get your hands stuck in and you have a little bit of creativity and a little bit of flair, then this is the degree for you. Also, you'll be very financially independent, because dentistry historically is a very well-paid career. It's a good career for women, especially if you're considering settling down and having a family, because it's flexible. You can decide what you want to do, if you want to work part-time or if you want to work full-time or if you want to specialise. Once you've got that dental degree, nobody's taking it away from you, and you'll do very well. Yeah, kind of carrying on from that, career independence. So, you know, you can decide if you want to be self-employed, which you will be if you work in practice, or if you want to be salaried and not worry about things. You know, if you need to go on maternity leave, for example, the NHS pay fantastic maternity leave. And you will have little glimpses of being able to do dental research and getting into academia. So if you enjoy things like that, if you think to yourself, I'd quite like to contribute to research and contribute to what's going on in the world around me, then you can do that through dentistry. And finally, you'll be very well respected, and you'll take pride in your job. You'll wake up and you'll go to your job every day and you'll feel happy with what you're doing. There's not many people that don't enjoy what they do. In my experience, I know historically dentistry had quite a high suicide rate, but that has changed. Things are changing, and it's a fantastic career, so I'd really recommend it. And if anybody does have any questions, please do feel free to contact me, and I'll be happy to speak to you. So next slide, please. Yeah, there we go. Just a couple of pictures to show my journey along the way. Lots of CV building, lots of presentations, and getting through COVID. Thank you very much, everyone.
Brilliant, lovely. Thank you very much, Niecoo. That was really, really interesting, really insightful, and really carried on from Zara's presentation earlier. You know, the next stage really, once you're in it and you're a practicing dentist. We have got a few questions, but I'll hold off on those until after we hear from Miss Hannon, who's going to talk about a couple of courses and routes into dentistry. So I'll hand over now to Camilla. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about a couple of degree courses, and I'm going to try not to repeat what Zahra and Niecoo have said, because they've given so much information. So the number of places that actually offer dentistry is actually relatively small. So there's 16 universities in the UK where you can study dentistry. There's 12 in England, 2 in Scotland, 1 in Wales and 1 in Northern Ireland. 2 of those are graduate only, and there are 2 postgraduate entry dental institutes, which probably aren't of interest to you at the moment, because that's a bit sort of into the future. They're worth a look though, because they do talk about some of the specialisms that Niecoo has mentioned. So I've picked 2 courses. If I can have the next slide, please. And the first one was actually Leeds. I didn't know that that was where Zara is studying. but I did pick Leeds because there were a couple of distinctive features about it that jumped out at me. Firstly, it's the only joint master's and bachelor dentistry degree in the UK where you come out with a master's. And secondly, it's the only dental school which now asks for the BMAT, which has been mentioned a couple of times, and that's the admissions test that Leeds uses for both medicine and dentistry. So it makes it a little bit different from the other dental schools which ask for the UCAT. If you're interested in Leeds, that's something to bear in mind, because you would sit the BMAT in November, and that's actually after the early UCAS deadline. So it's risking a little bit on doing well, but it does give you, of course, a fallback if the UCAT doesn't go quite as well as you hoped. So some of the things that jumped out to me about Leeds were that the idea of teamwork and the whole dental team training together in the first year. The first year is co-taught with dental hygiene and dental therapy. In terms of entry requirements, they're fairly standard. They ask for 3 A's, including biology and chemistry, and we've heard a little bit about picking your third subject and the value of doing something different. There is also an access to Leeds scheme, which makes a contextual offer of AAB, so a slightly lower offer. And I think Leeds is very good here because if you look on the website, it's very, very clear, unlike some university websites where you really have to search for the information. So they list the 6 criteria under which you can qualify for that slightly lower offer. And you have to kind of tick 2 of the boxes, so you have to have 2 out of those 6 criteria. So there's lots of information on the website. If you're at that point of starting to narrow down where you're going to apply, the 4 universities, then do your research, start early, look at all the information on the websites. So I think most of the other things have been mentioned about the course by Zara already, so I won't go back over that again. So that's a BMAT university. You do need to sit that in the November. That's the only session where you can sit it. For my second course, if I could have the next slide, Ellie, I've picked Glasgow because it seemed to offer a couple of kind of innovations which I thought were interesting. Now, Glasgow has always ranked highly for dentistry, and I know some of our students are wary of applying to Scottish universities generally, especially for competitive courses like medicine and dentistry. A lot of students say to me, don't they prefer Scottish students? Don't they keep places for Scottish students? And it's very hard to say. What I would say is that with the cap on students from the EU, they have got to kind of make up their numbers. They rely on that income. So just again, do your research. Something that I liked about Glasgow was that they are offering a Be a Dentist app, which they have created themselves, which look very good. If you look on the website, again, there's lots of information. And they're also running this Future Learn course, which obviously I can't vouch for it personally, but it's an online course which does look very good, and it gets very good reviews, as you can see on the slide. A couple of things about the course. The clinical experience starts in the 2nd year, and something that Niecoo mentioned about going to Japan. They also offer at the end of 4th year a 4-week elective study where you can do a research project or go to a different country, get involved in a healthcare project abroad, so that there's that option as well. In terms of their entry requirements, I couldn't find any kind of access scheme with a lower offer. It just seems to be the straight 3 A's. Also look carefully, as for other universities, look carefully at what they ask for GCSEs. So they ask for 6 GCSEs at a 7 or above, and those include obviously biology and chemistry, but also maths, physics and English. So do check those really carefully. Sometimes people are a little bit taken by surprise by the English requirement. There's no lower offers, not that I could find, but they do offer, they're quite generous with bursaries, and some of those are specifically for dentistry as well. You don't actually have to apply for those. They're all done when you apply through student finance, and they're means tested. So the Future Learn, it could be, it's not an alternative to, it's not a replacement for work experience, but it's something extra for your personal statement, which brings me on to work experience, which is the next slide, please. So work experience is something that always comes up for dentistry, and it has become, it was getting harder even in the, I would say, the year or two before COVID. With COVID, it's become harder. It can be really, really difficult to get work experience. With COVID, a lot of this online and virtual work experience sprung up, and I have a lot of students coming to ask me about, you know, whether it's worth doing. Again, I can't vouch individually because obviously I haven't done it, but what I would say is do your research, have a look at the cost. This one that I found here is very reasonably priced. Some of them I think are overpriced. Look very carefully at what's on offer and what you're actually getting for what you're paying for. I think it's hopefully with COVID regulations relaxing, it will become a little bit easier, but I think it is difficult to get into dental practices unless you have a personal contact. Not impossible, but difficult. So you just need to be prepared to be very persistent, I would say, and to make a nuisance of yourself, emailing, calling, firing off CVs until you find something. What I would also add is that look at the person specification for these courses. So most of the universities will put what they're looking for, and see if you can show evidence of the skills and characteristics that they're asking for. See if you can evidence those from things that you're already doing, so your extracurricular activities and your volunteering and so on. Next slide, please. So be creative. If you can't get into a conventional dental practice, there are lots of, I suppose, what would I say, dentist related kind of workplaces. If you just Google dental laboratories around Manchester, a dozen will come up. I did email a few of them. I didn't get a reply about whether they took work experience students, but be persistent. If you could even get a few days at one of these places, it would be very good on your personal statement, and it would show you've got an understanding of the kind of technical side of dentistry, which might set you apart from other applicants. Next slide, please, Ali. So another useful website is the NHS Health Careers website, and usually at this point I do mention alternative pathways into whatever career we're looking at. So at the moment there is no apprenticeship pathway into becoming a dentist. I don't think it's imminent. I don't think it's on the horizon. I think the body of scientific knowledge is so great that it might be difficult for it to be translated into an apprenticeship path. And I think, as Zara and Niecoo have said, the 5-year dentistry course is already very hands-on and very practical. So at the moment, I don't see an alternative to the traditional dentistry degree. But this is a useful website because it does outline all the other roles in a dental team. And for some of those roles, for studying dental nursing, dental technician, there is a degree path, but there's an apprenticeship path as well. So that's the NHS Health Careers website. It's got lots of good information on it. It doesn't tend to look very interesting, but there's lots of stuff on there that's worth looking at. So my final slide, if you could, is a bit of a plug for the Careers Department newsletter. And just to end on a kind of positive and upbeat note, so we've talked a lot about how competitive it is to get into study dentistry at university. It is really competitive. You do have to have top grades, and you have to do well in the UCAT or the BMAT. But I just wanted to finish on a success story about a recent former student who we featured in this newsletter last month. So Ramisa, and she was happy for her story to be shared. Obviously, she left in 2020. She applied for medicine. She was the first year of COVID cancelled A-levels. She applied to 4 unis. She had 2 interviews, but she had no offers, and it was very demoralising for her because she had a very good personal statement, very good portfolio of volunteering and experience. She'd done all the right things. She got good A-level grades, but she had no offers. So she took a gap year. She was determined to reapply. It wasn't easy because obviously we were in the middle of a pandemic, and she was on a gap year when she'd hoped to be at university. But credit to her, she managed to secure paid work in a Manchester dental practice, and initially she was in charge of the COVID protocol and making sure everything was disinfected and sanitized. So she worked as part of the dental team basically. She applied second time round, and this time round I think she had all four universities interviewed her, and from those 4 interviews she got 3 offers, and those were unconditional offers, obviously because she'd already got her A-level grades. So she did incredibly well, and she was able to choose Manchester University. The story didn't end there because they then deferred her place. So she's now on a second gap year, which was not what she would have chosen, but she has really made the most of it, and she's had a great experience of working in a large dentist practice during a pandemic as a really kind of valued member of their team. So I do think when she goes and starts her course, she'll be in a very good position. So it's been a long path for her, but she was very, very determined. And it does show that, you know, if you don't succeed first time round, there definitely still is hope if you've got the good grades. So that's the end of my section of the evening, and I'm going to hand back to Sarah. I think we have a few questions.
Hello, yes, we do have some questions. Thank you very much for that, Camilla. That's really interesting, and as we always do, as Camilla always does at these events, showing different pathways in and different opportunities to take you to the place where you want to be, and alternative courses, and, you know, ways to bolster, if you like, your application and your CV and your profile and so on and so forth, which is always really, really interesting. And it is worth thinking about it now at this stage, whatever sort of year or age you are, thinking about things, you know, small and large, that you can do that might help prepare you, particularly for courses like this, which are quite competitive to get onto. So yes, there are a few questions. I mean, I feel that some of this stuff has already been addressed, but so if our speakers want to just relatively briefly answer this question. The first one for Niecoo is, what made you pick dentistry over medicine? And that is something I think that is quite an interesting question generally. I think that you sort of referred to that with regards to your parents and so on, and perhaps that was what influenced you. But you also mentioned your colleague or friend who is a doctor, a medic. And so, yes, what would be the difference for you, really? Why did you go into one over the other, and why do you think people do that? So I'm going to hand over now to Niecoo.
So I think the main thing is to medics know that they want to be medics. In my experience, I've found, and what I mean by that is that medics know that they want to be in a hospital environment. They are not too concerned about the late nights, the long shifts, and getting their hands dirty in terms of whatever they need to do, because they want to be there at the bedside with the patient. They want to help people. They want to be saving lives, and that sort of risk of life versus death is something that they're drawn towards in a stronger way. Whereas for myself, when I was in the hospital, my overwhelming feeling was anxiety and the feeling of wanting to move away from that and be in an environment where the risk would possibly be lower, which obviously in dentistry there are risks involved. In any healthcare career, you are going to be always answerable and always needing to be skilled and responsible for your patients, but it's not on the same caliber as it would be as a medic. And so that was what I distinguished, because for me, I wanted to be able to go home at 5 o'clock and switch off and not think about, not worry too much or not think about my job. And actually, now that I'm on the other end of it and more experienced, that doesn't in fact happen. You do take things home and you do worry about them, and you work past 9 to 5, but it's not the same as medicine. Medicine is a lifestyle, and anyone who has parents who are doctors, like for example, my best friend who also went to Manchester High and she's a doctor, everything else will be secondary to that, and they absolutely live and breathe it. They are passionate about it, and I think that's the feeling you have to have if you want to go into medicine, because I also have 2 friends that dropped out of medicine because they just didn't enjoy it. So that's what I would say. I know that's quite a sort of strong answer and maybe not politically correct, but I just want to be honest with you, because if you're the kind of person that doesn't feel that they'd be able to cope with death and coping with very, very poorly patients and sleepless nights and dedicating your life to saving others, which is okay if you don't feel that you can do that, then maybe you should reconsider, because that level of commitment will be required from you. Yeah.
Okay, that's really good. No, that's a really good, honest answer. And I don't know if any of you are watching. This is going to hurt at the moment, but if you are, goodness me, that might put you off wanting to be a medic. Zara, I don't know if you briefly might want to give a response to that question in terms of why did you choose dentistry over, for example, medicine?
I think it's very true. I think if you want to do medicine, I think sort of straight away, it's a very specific type of personality. The people I was at school with who did medicine, I think they just knew from the start they wanted to. I feel like, again, the long nights, I wanted more of a 9 to 5 job. I wanted to be able to have a lifestyle outside of my career, so I feel like dentistry was better for that. And I generally just had more of an interest in dentistry than medicine. Medicine just didn't appeal to me. So I think it's definitely true. I think if it's something you're really interested in, then go for it. But if you have doubts, I would take the time to really consider it, because it is a big commitment.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, I mean, I think what's coming over sort of loud and clear is maybe the sort of the lifestyle and the level of intensity somehow, if you're looking at risk and life and death risk and things like that in hospitals. But yes, those are really helpful answers. Thank you both for that. There is a question about grades, but I'm not going to ask our speakers specifically divulge their grades. But what I would say is that all the entry requirements are very clear on the websites, both in terms of A-levels and also GCSE results and expectations. Look out for English language GCSE. Quite often they would want a 7 or sometimes a 6, but you need to look out for that, because that's not something that you would necessarily expect. And the other thing to say is that in some courses, when you get to university, when you get to application and results day, sometimes they may let you in if you drop a grade here or there, but because it's so competitive with something like dentistry, they really don't allows students to enter if they don't meet the grade requirements that are published and that are contained in your offer. Generally speaking, it's 3 A's for dentistry and a whole bunch of 7s at GCSE. I guess I would just ask, and you speakers don't need to divulge, but did both of you you can just, oh no, people can't see, can they? Did you meet the terms of your offer, or sometimes perhaps in earlier cycles students were able to be admitted if they had missed a grade? You may not want to divulge that, of course, but how flexible were the universities that you applied for? Zara, do you want to go first, just you're in the order of speakers?
So I think I did mention this when I was speaking before. Some universities will be a little bit more lenient if you've sort of just missed a grade. I think that's why I was stressing as well the importance of the interview, because just the other day I heard about with someone who knew someone in medicine. They dropped a grade, but because they performed so well at their interview, they were happy to accept them onto the course. Like I said, these sort of clinical courses, it is about the grades, but it is also how you are as a person. And I think obviously, because it is quite competitive, it is important to make sure you do meet those requirements the best you can, but I wouldn't say that they're completely strict. Some universities may be lenient, but I wouldn't pin my hopes on that. I'd make sure, obviously, if you can, get the grades.
Okay. Yeah. Niecoo, what was your experience grade-wise?
So actually, I didn't make my grades the first time round. So I did chemistry, biology and maths for A-level, and I dropped music at AS. And I didn't make an A in chemistry. I was a couple of marks off. I was a B. And I was devastated because it was the year that the tuition fees were going from 3,000 to 9,000, so the universities were particularly oversubscribed as well, and I had received 4 offers at interview, but they didn't let me in. And you know what, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because having that year just gave me a little bit of maturity. I worked as a receptionist in dental practice, learned a little bit about what dentistry involves, and I went into the degree a lot more mature and ready to study. And you'll be interested to know that actually I would argue a third of our dental school year had done the same. So it's competitive, and you may worry, oh gosh, what if I don't make my grades? But you can only do your best, and hopefully your best will be good enough. But if it's not, sometimes these things happen and you don't know why they do. But it's very, very common. It's more common than you think, and actually having a little bit more maturity before you go into a degree of that, because it's sort of from day one, get going, and it helps. So yeah, so I didn't get my grades.
Brilliant. Well, not brilliant that you didn't get your grades. Not brilliant that you didn't get your grades, but brilliant that you learned from that and you were able to sort of communicate a positive outcome. And what I would say is that these days it's a little bit more competitive, what with the pandemic and everything. That tends to be, I'm sure Miss Hannah would concur, more of a 2-year cycle, as we had with the Mesa story there, a kind of a 2-year application process, and the level of maturity that you gain from doing something in a gap year, potentially a forced gap year, really does help in the long run in terms of how you feel about your studies and the profession you've gone into. And actually, that sort of leads on to the next question, and I feel it's been kind of addressed, but there's one about when you go into dentistry. It's a question about, not sure of your career path. I'm assuming it's related to career within dentistry. So obviously, Niecoo, you've chosen, I think it's orthodontics, that you've decided that's where your area of interest is. And I guess you got to that through just experiencing a range of different things and just thinking, right, that's what I'm interested in. I don't know if you could maybe offer a quick response to, if somebody doesn't know, what would be the best way for them to find out what their area of interest is.
Certainly. So I think it's one of those things that dentistry is, you'll learn all aspects of dentistry in university. You'll be a well-rounded dentist, and you'll have insight into all areas. And then over the few years of the degree that you will start to through experience, know what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. So some people love taking teeth out, other people can't stand it, and you'll know. So by the time you get to graduation, and then, as I explained, you do a year of general dental practice where again you dip your hands in absolutely everything, you sort of start to form a picture in your mind of what you enjoy, and then you go from there. So you don't necessarily need to try everything out. You may already know what you want, but you'll be given plenty of opportunity to experience everything throughout your dental degree. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. And I think it's also important to stress that my telling you all this information is more to sort of motivate you towards all the different pathways you can do, but you don't need to be stressed into making that decision anytime soon. You'll have plenty of time to make that decision.
Fantastic, thank you. I can see actually that our clock is running down and I don't want us to suddenly get cut off. So I would rather end on a positive thank you to everybody. Thank you to our two speakers, Zara and Niecoo, and to Camilla for her insight into courses there. The questions that we have remaining, which are just a couple, I'm sure we can make sure that those can get answered over email or even just in the chat box right there. I don't know if our speakers are able to see those and just pop some answers in there. But other than that, just to say thank you very, very much to everyone for speaking tonight, and our organisers behind the scenes, but also to our people who've come to attend. And I hopefully you found it very, very interesting. And it's lovely to be able to present this to you this evening. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. And keep your eye out for our Futures News Careers letter. Okay, good night, everybody.